and welcome back. We are doing some more paranormal videos now. Um, Question is, what's the most terrifying paranormal experience you've ever had? This is over on Reddit, of course. And so here we go. First story. Not really bad compared to other people, but around 10 years ago, I had a pretty spooky experience. My old house was a Victorian schoolmaster's house, very renovated, but it was still an old home. One time I had my friend over and we were in the converted attic. It was a super big room and we put old junk in and stuff. Think of it as a slightly more nice version of Roderick's room from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Anyway, one time we were up there messing about, doing whatever, when this Christmas teddy with a Christmas music player inside starts playing. Obviously this is pretty scary as kids, so we make a run out of the attic. As we were leaving, a box starts moving around. Now, I have hit it when running out, but I was very specifically remembering nothing hitting my leg, arms, etc. It couldn't have been my friend who hit the box either, as it started moving just as I went past it. I'm also very certain it wasn't a breeze of wind that we conjured up when going past, as the box was moving in a way that seemed like it had been pushed. Nothing like this ever really happened again. A few times I did experience cold spots, but that was really all. All right, next story. We have, not my own story, but my great aunt's. After her mother died, my great aunt placed one of her mother's dolls on her fireplace. Over the next year or so, any time my aunt and uncle argued, weird marks would appear on the doll's face that looked exactly like tear marks. The eyes would also shift to follow my uncle and scared the crap out of him. It was eventually so creepy that my aunt went to her mother's grave and said that she was okay and didn't need to be looked after so closely, and to please stop. The doll never had tear tracks or shifted its eyes again. It's a little creepy. This one isn't necessarily scary, but definitely something paranormal, they say. I was 14 and sitting by myself in the living room, playing some Halo, when I noticed that the room around me seemed oddly quiet. I paused the game and tried to listen for the difference. It was strange. My house is over 100 years old, and usually there's an odd creak audible from somewhere nearby. Not now, though. It was dead quiet. I felt strange, but not threatened. There was nothing sinister about the silence. I sat for a few more minutes just listening. It almost felt felt peaceful, actually. Then suddenly I felt a hand on my shoulder, very lightly and briefly. But even today I still remember the distinct feeling of a hand on my shoulder. It didn't scare me, nor did I jump up in surprise. I actually felt a familiar presence, like family. I mentioned the experience to my mom. She told me I'm assuming shared the experience, the same thing, only one room over. She says she felt her father's presence with the hand. Pretty cool. That is nice. At least it wasn't threatening or anything. Well, that's cool. Next story. Around 9 years ago, a woman, 37 years old with long blonde hair, died due to a car accident at night, where she crashed into our zinc staircase, and doing so crashed our house as well. A few months later, coming home in the dark from training, I saw her standing at the corner of our house. I looked away, then back again. She was still there, one step further into my direction. I could see her clearly because of the light from the motion sensor. Guess she wasn't ready to move on. Not scary, but funny. Okay, this is a good one. My family sails on the Great Lakes. A local author wrote 2 books called Haunted Lakes 1 and 2. The second book came out when I was 10 or 12. It detailed a spooky story of a cloudy day where a local guide was leading one visitor through an island lighthouse. It was a cloudy, crappy day. The visitor stopped and asked the guide whether he had his kids with him on the island. Guide says no, and as far as he knows, there's no kids on the island. Visitor is puzzled since he can hear distant cries of mother, and kids playing. Author of books assumes haunted because many of the old keepers were from Germany. But I've always had a strong suspicion that 2 just heard my brother and I, probably about 4 or 6 at the time. My family tended to go out to islands on our sailboat, even when the weather wasn't great, and we could play along outside as long as it wasn't pouring rain or something. We also grew up speaking German, since my mom taught German at a school, and we were quite loud. Finally, we had a small craft and knew all the anchorage. So if it had been on the island, no one might have seen us. So I think I just got written into a book as a ghost. That's pretty cool, actually. That is a pretty cool story. Next one, ready? There was a story in a local newspaper about the large property that was selling off parcels, including the old empty Victorian home that sat on the hill at the edge of some woods. Article mentioned that it might be haunted, with some contractor who was driving up to get some work on the property hearing these little girls giggling. It was me and a friend. We'd been sneaking, hanging around the area for a better part of a year. It had a little barn, little chicken coop, with this great overgrown paddock with honeysuckle. We saw contractors come and go, and remember watching this guy struggling to shift gears in his cement truck from our hiding spot. Seemed to take forever for him to get up the hill, and he was so flustered, which made us laugh. But maybe it's because we were creeping him out. Love to think those guys were spooked by little Victorian ghost girls. Never experienced anything paranormal or weird there. It's just a lovely spot. Then became a really boring housing development. Aw. So there's, yeah. Next one. Whatever is in my house last year, a shaman had to expel it for us. It started with cabinets opening and progressed to a 10-pound box of screws flying down the hallway, and the box with my mom's ashes in it being broken and taken and placed on the top of a trash can. Wow. That's kind of weird. Once I woke up in the middle of the night to see a shadowy figure standing at the foot of my bed, just watching me. I couldn't move or scream, and I felt this overwhelming sense of dread. It felt like hours before the figure finally vanished, but it was the most terrifying experience of my life. I still get chills thinking about it. I can understand that. That's a little freaky, a little creepy. Let's see. In the late 90s, my mom had been suffering from rheumatoid arthritis and then finally cancer. She had this little rack of air with a long hose that stretched throughout the house. When she walked from room to room, she pulled the hose across the linoleum and carpeting. The sound was very distinct. At the time I had my girlfriend, we were up in an overly dramatic relationship that we probably should not have been in. My mother didn't approve of my girlfriend, but she let me have my space and was only occasionally vocal about it. Sometime after my mother passed, the girlfriend and I were home alone, doing what teenagers do and alone, when I heard the air hose being pulled roughly down the hall and across the linoleum. I froze. A cold, sinking sensation settled in my guts. Within a couple of months, I reevaluated the relationship and we broke up. To this day, I wonder if it was my mother or only my subconscious. Maybe a mix of both. I don't know. Yeah. I was a cleaner in a seniors dementia living facility, and there was a woman who had like a lot of crosses and Bibles. She didn't say much, but she liked me and would smile and want to interact, wanting to push my cleaning cart and garbage and laundry carts with me, and often she would say, "Boo." She died after I was there for a couple of years, and a new woman moved into her room. Nice old lady, very old and friendly. When I clean people's rooms, sometimes they want to chat and talk a little bit. Anyway, so I knock and come in, and I'm cleaning, and she's talking to me about how I'm like a wizard, and I clean the room so good and fast, and I'm telling her that I've been doing it for years now, and she starts talking about the book she's reading, and we just have a nice conversation. As this happens, a picture falls off the wall and smashes the glass, and it's kind of weird, but it happens, so I clean it up and leave the room. Right after this, it was time to take the garbage to the basement, so I load up the garbage bin and start collecting from the next unit. It's after lunch now, so most people are in bed and workers are having meetings, so there was no one around, and all my life, I swear I heard boo. I looked around and still no one around, and I thought it sounded like the lady who had been in the room before, but it was just a realization that I couldn't believe it. It was like she was jealous of this other woman and ended her conversation by knocking the thing off the wall, and then followed me into the garbage bin like she did before. It seemed so strange. Yeah, that's kind of strange. I've had many paranormal experiences in my life. Whenever I was around 15 years old, we lived in a home that looked like it had been, had some past, if you know what I mean. And I was laying in my parents' bedroom on a call. I felt a presence near me, and I was a little confused. But I ignored it nonetheless, until it got so bad to the point where I sent shivers down my spine, and I turn around. My parents had a big mirror. I look in the mirror and see a tall shadow figure with red eyes staring directly at me. Then it walked away and out of the mirror's sight. I screamed and ran out of the house in fear and didn't return until my stepmother came back. That is a little strange. A house I grew up in had someone die on the property. We used to have a crystal ashtray at the fireplace mantel, and my father received this as a gift from the White House when he did some work out there. My friend was in the living room when the ashtray started sliding across the mantel by itself about 6 inches, and then stopped. My father said to ignore it because it's just the lady that died in the house trying to get your attention. He would always call on her by her name and say, "Okay, that's enough. We know you're here. Don't scare the guests." It wasn't scary for me per se, but my friends got freaked out when it did happen. The next town over, we had a famous exorcism occur around in 1940s. that became a movie based on the event. Ooh, The Exorcist by William Peter Bladley. That's cool. That's really nice. I don't think either of these were actually paranormal, but they were the two most terrifying moments. First, I was babysitting for a family, and the youngest still had a baby monitor. After the kids were in bed, I fell asleep on the couch and woke up to the sound of two men talking on the baby monitor. Looking back, the signal was likely crossed, but I was absolutely terrified to go check on that kid when it was happening. I hope you did check on the kid. Second, my husband and I were asleep when I'm awoken by my husband sitting up with his finger to his lip, going shh. So naturally, I said, "Why are you saying shush?" And he dead-ass pointed to the corner, the darkest corner of the room, said, "Because that man over there wants you to be quiet." It still gives me chills. Yeah, it gives me chills too. My uncle, aunt, and I saw a book fly off the shelf in the living room. My ex-girlfriend and I saw a woman with old clothes and a pale, sunken face standing in a ditch. My bedroom door opened itself at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I saw a black mass disappear into the floor. These are all distinct, separate occurrences that I can't easily explain. Yeah. Lots of that. That's why I never tell my own stories, because there's too damn many, honestly. I don't like reading other people's. I lived with a roommate in an old house that was on the Underground Railroad. One night, I fell asleep with my back on the lights, with the lights on. I woke up suddenly to a voice coming over that sounded like a megaphone. I can't recall what it was shouting, but it was as if it was giving commands. As I was prone to night terrors, I was paralyzed. This eventually passed, and I fell back asleep. Waking in the morning, I walked past the bathroom, and my roommate was shaving in the sink. He looked terrified. I asked what happened when he said he had woken up by the smoke detector. He said as he approached it, it accelerated and beeping, and he returned down the hall to hit the light switch. It slowed down, only to accelerate as he was walking back towards it. He pulled the battery and laid awake in bed until the sun came up. He was terrified. We literally had to talk to the house and assure whatever it was there that we meant no harm. No incidents followed. Well, that's good. You knew what to do and took care of it, and not a bad thing. In 2003, I was on a road trip with two friends. My friend who owned the car was driving, and I was in the passenger seat. We never wore seatbelts because we were teenagers and, well, stupid. We stopped at a rest stop in Ohio to get drinks, and something in my head told me to put the seatbelt on after not wearing it previously for 3 hours, so I did. We got into a car accident 10 minutes later. I was drinking my soda when the airbag went off and broke my nose and knocked out 3 teeth. It could have been much worse without the seatbelt. Wow. Hope your friends are okay. Didn't mention those. Over 10 years ago now, I moved to this old house on the outskirts of a small town. It was a 3-story house split into 2 apartments. Main floor and basement was mine and my boyfriend at the time. Top floor was rented by twin brothers. There was a landing inside that was communal, led to both of our front doors. 3 different incidents happened. First one, my boyfriend had a few friends come over after work to hang out. We were all in the living room directly in front of the front door leading to the landing. We wanted to smoke some weed, and it was still illegal back then, so I got up to make sure the door was fully shut and locked. The second I sat back down, the door slammed open so hard it hit the wall. My boyfriend was up in an instant, but nobody was out on the landing. He went and knocked on the twins' door, but they were both gone at work still. The friends soon left after that. Second one, I was home alone. It was like 10 a.m. Boyfriend and twins were all gone to work. I had our stereo on listening to the radio. I shut it off to go take a shower. Halfway through my shower, the stereo flips on at the highest volume it could go, and it was flipped into CD mode, playing like track 5 or something. I've never gotten out of that shower so fast in my life. Last incident, I was home alone again, getting supper ready for when my boyfriend got home. I was flipping between watching a movie in the living room and stirring the spaghetti noodles and sauce in the kitchen. Did about 3 back and forths. On the last trip back to the kitchen, I found a little red plastic toy car sitting in the middle of the kitchen floor. Never did find out where it came from. Okay, that one's a little freaky. That one's a little weird. I wouldn't really want to speculate with that one to mention. My husband's story. When he was in the Marines in the 1980s, this guy was a devil worshiper. So one night, everyone was in the squad bay, and the devil worshiper starts chanting, which he had done a lot before. At this time, he started turning translucent. Then he started turning black. Then his features took on dog characteristics. Now everyone just got the hell out of there. Later, they discussed this, and my husband chalked it up to mass hysteria, while some of the other guys were just generally freaked out. Within a few weeks, that guy got kicked out because he joined the KKK and tattooed those initials on his face. Wow. That one's a little out there. Interesting though. I know how sleep paralysis works, so I consider this a hallucination and not an interaction, but it was still very scary. In this sleep paralysis incident, I was in bed when I heard someone unlock my front door. My best friend had a key, so it wasn't unusual for him to drop by, so I figured it was him. I heard him walk across my apartment, enter my bedroom, and sit down at the head of my bed. At this point, I figured it was not really my friend, but because of this sleep paralysis, I could not turn to look. This being started massaging my hands and whispering in a language that I did not understand. I kept trying to move around and see them, but was frozen. Then they leaned into my line of sight. It was just a black silhouette like the Grim Reaper, a shadow person. I had never heard of the shadow person phenomenon, but when I described my experience to my boyfriend, he told me everything he had heard on Coast to Coast AM about them. See, somebody was there looking out for you, and they're helping you out with finding out stuff. That is freaky, though. I wouldn't want to deal with that myself. I've got two stories. First, I was in bed, just that part of being between fully awake and asleep, and I felt a hand on my hip. Then my husband, I assumed, began to kiss me. I was all like, "Oh, come on, you couldn't have started this earlier, really?" I opened my eyes and saw he had his back to me. I can still feel the hand on my hip. Oh, that's weird. Second, I was a nurse working nights. Around 2 a.m., I was walking up the hall and noticed a TV was in an unoccupied room. I stepped 1 foot into the dark room, turned the TV off, and heard from the TV, "Good morning, Alice." My first name is Alice. I switched to days not long after that. I don't blame you. Okay, we'll do one more before this video ends. I was hanging out at my cousin's house when I heard running coming from the hallway, and so I opened the door to see what it was because I'm practically at the intelligence of a horror protagonist and there's nothing. I walked back into my cousin's room while leaving the door open, and the noise happened again. I looked for the door and there was nothing there. The running happened again while I was in the hallway. So the closer I got, the colder it got. Then I got pushed into the bathroom door. I noped the fuck out of the house and haven't been there since. I don't blame you. I totally wouldn't go back there either. Anyway, thank you for watching and listening to this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to, please like, share, subscribe, comment, do all the things. And I'll see you next video. Bye.